Happy Saturday. This is Reid Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio. Welcome to the Rockies, Utah to Nebraska, Montana to New Mexico. KGAB AM 650 in the Town Square Network out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. 780 AM The Monster out of Denver, and Easy 101 out of Colorado Springs. You know, I'm going to kind of move this first half of the show along quickly. We have on Ira Melman. He's with the FAIR group, F-A-I-R. They are fighting the yeoman's battle on this immigration deal. They are nonpartisan. They are a membership outfit with more than 250,000 members and growing strong around the United States. They are the go-to guys for information for government to special think tanks on what immigration is, legal and illegal, what its effects are, and what will really fix the problem that the United States has. Ira's going to be talking to us a little bit today about what legal immigration is, because there's a lot of confusion. You know, H-1 visas and green cards, you hear all this stuff. He's going to sort that out. Number two, he's going to tell us about the effects of illegal immigration. This is based on years of study. He's going to give you the websites. You can go read the reports for yourself, same reports the government relies on. And then number three, we're going to talk about this current bill, 1,200 pages of crap that nobody got to read, contrary to the president's promise that all us public could read it for 5 days.
And the last half of the show is going to be my opinions, because you've requested them, on the current spate of scandals growing by the minute: IRS Benghazi, the AP Rosenthal perjury, you name it. So let's get started.
Ira, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
You bet. Listen, first of all, very briefly, tell us about FAIR. Tell us where folks can go to your website, read these reports, and become a member if they want to.
Well, first of all, FAIR is a national, nonprofit, and nonpartisan organization that examines immigration policy. And our basic position is that immigration policy should reflect the interests of the American people. The reason we have immigration laws, the reason every nation on earth has immigration laws, is because we understand that what might be in the individual interest of somebody from another country to come here doesn't necessarily serve the greater interests of the United States, and particularly workers and taxpayers in this country. And so our view is that immigration reform needs to begin by recognizing the interests of the American people in immigration policy. And if people really want to look at more information about our group, the website is fairus.org. That's FAIRUS.org.
Super. And by the way, folks in Colorado, we got lots of listeners, hundreds of thousands in Colorado. This gentleman knows Colorado. He was not only a professor of journalism, he was a special assistant to Governor Richard Lamb. Remember Dick Lamb? So he knows Colorado, so this is especially apropos. First of all, what is legal immigration? If you're outside this country and you want to come here, either temporarily to work or become a citizen, very briefly, tell us the various steps you have to go through.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it is the process by which people apply to come to the United States. And in order to get to the United States, one of several things needs to be in place here. Either you need to have a relative here in the United States. The top preferences are for immediate relatives of U.S. citizens. And then it continues on out to more extended family members. And then there's also a relatively small number of visas available to people who come because they have some employment skills that are necessary here, or at least desired on the part of some employers. And quite frankly, our legal immigration policy makes no sense today. It really does need to be reformed. Basically, it's institutionalized nepotism. Once people come to the United States as immigrants, they can start petitioning for relatives. The immediate relatives come sooner, the more extended family members come later, but the fact of the matter is that all these people are admitted irrespective of their own qualifications. It doesn't matter what their job skills are. It doesn't matter what their education levels are. All that really matters is they happen to be related to somebody else who came recently.
So the bottom line is if you get one family finger in the pie, you can eat all the apples.
Exactly. It's what's known as chain migration. You get one person here, the next thing you know, you've got, perhaps dozens more relatives following over time, and really doesn't make any sense for the country. And what happens is we keep promising more and more admissions, and the line gets longer and longer. Every time we let somebody in the front door, the line gets longer, not shorter. And clearly, we need to revise the way we select legal immigrants to come to the United States. We ought to have limited numbers of people coming here. It ought to be based on individual merit. Family migration should be limited to spouses and unmarried minor children, the nuclear family. But, we can't promise people who have voluntarily left other family members behind in the home country that we are going to have a policy mechanism that is going to allow them to reunite the families that they chose to separate in the first place. And that's, I think most people would say that is a very sensible way to go about immigration policy, that you select people, you put everybody in the world on an equal footing, and within the limited slots that are available, you pick the people who are most likely to contribute to this country, not just people who happen to be related to somebody else.
We agree completely. Now, let's say you get here. There's various ways you can stay temporarily. You can kind of elongate your stay, and you can eventually become a citizen. Very briefly, give us the key ways people stay in this country legally.
Well, the way that you stay in the country legally is you can find some pretense for why you ought to be allowed to remain. Obviously, getting married to an American citizen is probably the fastest way of getting yourself into the United States on a permanent basis. And obviously there are many, many legitimate marriages between U.S. citizens and foreign nationals, but it also invites a great deal of fraud. We have seen that marriage fraud, people marrying for convenience to get the green card, is a big problem. And there are other ways people come here as students, that they find employers who are willing to sponsor them. That happens on a not infrequent basis. Other people come here on temporary work visas. They're employed for a given period of time. At the end of that time period, the employer can, in many cases, attempt to sponsor that person to remain here in the United States on a permanent basis. But primarily the avenue for remaining in the country legally is having some relative here.
Okay, and what type of documentation? If you're in the country and you're in here legally, just give us like the 3 or 4 main types of documentation, because I know there's a plethora of them.
Mm-hmm. The documentation, obviously, if you are being admitted from outside the United States, if you apply at one of our embassies or consulates abroad, then you have to, obviously bring all the local documentation that you have and undergo a background check in those countries. Our embassies and consulates are set up to be able to look at the backgrounds of people in their home countries before they are even admitted to the United States. Once you're here, it becomes much more difficult. But, in terms of, as you talked about, extending your stay in the United States, if, for instance, you were marrying an American citizen, then obviously something like a marriage license would be the sort of documentation that you would need. And then you do go through a procedure where, they check to see, or at least try to check to see that it's a legitimate marriage and that you're actually living together. In terms of employment, there are certain standards that theoretically need to be met by the employer to be able to sponsor a foreign worker. He has to demonstrate that there isn't a qualified American worker available. And in most cases, there are. It's simply that the employer has chosen to hire this particular immigrant rather than an American worker. But nevertheless, that's the way the system is designed.
And what's the difference between, people hear all these terms, and it's very confusing, even to somebody who follows it like me. What's an H-1 visa? What's a green card? Give us 2 or 3 examples there so people know what this stuff is when they hear about it on the news.
Okay, an H-1B visa, and there are also other H visas. These are temporary work visas. These are visas that are supposed to be allocated to people with specific skills that might be needed here in the United States. But again, these are often categories of temporary workers that are abused by the employers. That they use them because it's cheaper to hire a foreign worker on an H visa very often than it is an American American worker. And number two, once you have somebody here on an H visa, they're more or less tied to the employer. So, if Microsoft hires you on an H-1B visa, it's not as easy for you to go to work at Amazon next week as it is for an American citizen. An American citizen can turn around and say, look, I got a better offer down the street. I'm out of here. It's much more.
They get lower employment rates and they get employee stability also.
Yes, it gives the employer greater control over wages and also over the terms of employment for the worker. The other thing you mentioned, a green card. A green card is once you've been admitted as a legal permanent resident of the United States. That is the document that is issued. You are somebody who is either qualified to live permanently in the United States because of some kind of family connection here, or because you have some exceptional skill that we have decided that you're somebody we want here.
I gotcha. Now, and then there's student visas, right?
Yes, those are the. I believe they're either the J or the F visas, whatever they are. We do admit foreign students to study here in the United States, and again, these are supposed to be temporary visas. And the terms of these visas are that you will come to the United States, you will attend a university here, and at the end of once you've matriculated, once you've graduated, that you return home. There's nothing wrong with admitting foreign students to come study in the United States. We've always done it. But again, these are temporary visas. These are not meant to be permanent residents of the United States.
And obviously, little of this is policed. The student visas certainly are policed, just going by the friends of the Boston bombers, two of whom their student visas had expired, and they were still allowed back in the country.
Exactly, as were several of the 9/11 terrorists.
Right.
We don't enforce our immigration laws, whether it is tracking people who have overstayed their visas or any other sort of immigration enforcement. We have traditionally done a very poor job of enforcing it, and under the Obama administration, they have affirmatively decided not to enforce the laws except against people who have gone out and committed other serious crimes here in the United States.
Yes.
So, it's very nice that...
And even that doesn't happen too often.
Right. I mean, it's very nice that, you want to enforce the law after something has gone boom, but, I think most Americans would prefer that something doesn't go boom in the first place.
So, we now have a rough idea of what legal immigration is, as loose-knit and as hole-ridden as it is. Now, in the case of illegal immigration, you guys have done some studies on the effects of illegal immigration on crime. Social type things, jobs, you name it. Give us some of those big stats.
Mm-hmm. Well, illegal immigration tends to be harmful to most Americans. You have people coming into the country. First of all, we don't know who these people are, and very often, or not very often, but on occasion, these are people who really do present a danger to American society. The same open borders that allow in people who are just looking for work also allow in people who are here for more nefarious purposes. The greatest impact of illegal immigration is on American workers. The primary reason why people come to the United States illegally is because they're seeking a job that pays more money than they can earn in their home country, and I think all of us understand the motivation. But the problem is that it does affect workers here in this country, and that's the reason we have immigration laws in the first place. First of all, the best estimate is that there are about 8 million illegal immigrants working here in the United States. Well, that's 8 million jobs that are not available to American workers, and particularly at a time like this, those jobs are very, very important to American workers. And it's not true that these are just jobs that Americans don't want or Americans won't do. Very often it is wages and working conditions that Americans won't accept. If you allow large numbers of people to come in here illegally, what happens is you drive down wages and working conditions and create self-fulfilling prophecies. If you're offering poor wages and poor working conditions, Americans won't show up, and then you fill the jobs with illegal aliens. But it doesn't mean that Americans don't want those jobs. The second big impact is on American taxpayers. One of the things we have to understand in this country is we don't have cheap labor. It is only cheap to the direct employer. The direct employer may get a low-cost worker, but then everybody else in society has to subsidize that worker and his or her family, including education for children, health care, a whole range of human services. So it is very costly to American taxpayers as well. And, even though it might save the employer a few dollars. So the two big impacts are both on American workers and on American taxpayers.
And what have you got any stats on crimes by illegal aliens or areas which have high proportionate illegal alien populations, crime stats relative to areas with lower populations?
Well, probably the most telling indication is that about 25% of our federal prison population is made up of illegal aliens. And, as I said earlier, if you leave your borders wide open, it isn't just going to be people who come here to work, in spite of the fact that it does have an impact on American workers. It can be people who are coming here to do all sorts of things, and it shows up on police blotters and in federal prisons and local prisons.
So to kind of put this in perspective for the audience, if we have a population of 350 million, and I'm just going to use round numbers, there's 20 million illegal aliens in the country. That's, give or take about 7%. So 7% of the population is illegal aliens, but 25% of the prison population is illegal aliens.
Of the federal prison.
That's a pretty telling statistic.
Right, and let's be clear, that's the federal prison population. Obviously, there are more people in prison at the state level than there are at the federal level. But nevertheless, if you go around the country, you will very often find that it does present a significant problem to states. And, it's one of the reasons that the federal government has had a program in place for many, many years called SLEAG, which is an acronym for state, I forget the exact words, but basically it compensates the states for incarceration of criminal aliens. So obviously the federal government and the states have recognized that this is a significant problem. In addition to the crimes that are committed, it does run the states a considerable amount of money to keep foreign criminals incarcerated. Okay,
so that brings us to today. And today we have a Senate scrambling around on a 1,200-page bill, which Harry Reid brought to the floor on a Monday morning as many senators were getting back, with no chance to read it, just like Obamacare, with all sorts of pork, slush, nonsense, stimulus, you name it in it, to buy votes. It's a repeat of Obamacare, but perhaps even more horrific in the long term than Obamacare. So tell us a little bit about this bill, because you hear all sorts of crap on TV, you hear all sorts of crap on radio. The borders are going to be closed first, and only then can people get the path to citizenship, and nobody's going to get any social benefits whatsoever while they're not a citizen, and everybody's going to have to pay a fine, and all sorts of crap. And then you hear the other side saying this is nonsense, it's like 1986. We're going to get snookered just like Reagan did. We're going to get the amnesty for 11 million, they estimate, illegal aliens, but we're never going to close the border. What is it?
Well, it is an amnesty bill, first and foremost. Illegal aliens will get their amnesty within 6 months of the president signing this bill, if the House goes along with it. There's a big hurdle still to be cleared in the House of Representatives. But under the bill that is going through the Senate right now, illegal aliens would get amnesty within 6 months of enactment. The only trigger is that the Secretary of Homeland Security has to present a plan to Congress to secure our borders within that 6 months. They don't actually have to secure the borders. All they need to do is present a plan, which ought to leave people scratching their heads. Here you have the Department of Homeland Security. It's been around for 10 years, and they don't have a plan in place already.
But be that as it... You have Janet Napolitano saying it's all done.
Right. Yes. As far as the administration is concerned, our borders are secure. Most Americans don't believe that, but that's what the administration claims. But the bottom line is that all they have to do is present a plan. Under the amended bill that was adopted earlier this week, they will have to hire more Border Patrol agents, complete the fence. Of course, that is all contingent on, number one, the discretion of the Secretary of Homeland Security. Within this bill are all kinds of loopholes that allow the Secretary of Homeland Security on a discretionary basis not to do all the things that are called for in terms of border security.
Since 2006, we're supposed to have completed the fence.
Right. That's the thing. These are the same promises that were made in 2006 and 2007. In 2006, Congress passed a bill saying we had to have double-layer fencing along 700 miles of our southern border. This bill requires only single-layer fencing. So basically, it is a withdrawal of a promise that has already been made. The second thing, you talked about the fact that people come and overstay their visas. Well, one of the things that Congress passed back in 2007 was a law that said we have to have biometric records of people entering and leaving the United States at all sea, land, and airports. Well, under this bill, we eliminate people leaving the country via land borders. So people who come to the United States on visas and leave by land borders aren't going to be tracked at all. So we'll still have no idea who is in the country and whether people are overstaying their visas. Again, it is a rollback of a previous promise that hasn't been kept, and I think we can all expect that even these watered-down promises won't be kept, and given the proclivities of this administration, that the Secretary will use her discretion not to put in place all these enforcement measures that the bill claims to have. But in the meantime, the illegal aliens get legal status within 6 months. 10 years down the line, they're supposed to get green cards. By that point, even if nothing happens, Congress can simply decide, what, the heck with it. They're here, they've been working, they've been in temporary status. We're going to give them green cards anyway. So what we're likely to find is the same thing that happened in 1986. The illegal aliens will get their amnesty. The American people will get the short end of the stick. None of that will happen. And in addition to that, it is going to admit probably 30 million new permanent residents to the United States over the next 10 years. I mean, think about that. That is virtually the entire population of Canada that will be admitted to live and work in the United States at a time when we have 22 million people in this country who are out of work, who can't find jobs. It is not just an amnesty for illegal aliens. It is basically opening the vault to employers so that they no longer have to hire American workers at American wages.
Yeah, unbelievable. So when they get legal status 6 months from now under this botulism of a bill, what social programs can they get money from?
Well, under this bill, they will not be eligible for most federal programs. What they may be eligible for are a lot of state programs. The bill talks simply about what the federal government will provide or won't provide. States will have the discretion to provide all sorts of things, and quite frankly, they are going to be in a position where they're going to have to provide a whole bunch of things. First of all, the Supreme Court has ruled that any child in this country is entitled to a K through 12 education at taxpayer expense. So that is going to continue to be the case. You're going to have probably more people show up. Also, even though they're not going to qualify for Obamacare, it's going to be untenable for state and local governments to allow seriously ill people not to get health care. So these are burdens that are going to fall on local government. And by the way, Congress, the people who framed this bill obviously recognized that putting people on Obamacare who were getting legalization wasn't going to play well with voters. But ironically, that is going to give employers incentives to hire these newly legalized illegal aliens over American workers because they don't face the penalty and they don't face the 50 employee rule, and they get out of they've created a huge illegal alien loophole for employers. Exactly. It is going to actually encourage employers to hire former illegal aliens over American workers. So in addition to all the other costs, it is going to put American workers at an even greater disadvantage than they already are.
Just out of curiosity, after the 6 months, can these people qualify for welfare, food stamps, any of those programs?
Not as the bill is currently written, but as we've seen in the past, these things can change over time. And some of the Democrats have already expressed the intent that after they're here for a while, we'll try to fix that. So in order to make it palatable for Republicans to vote for it, they have excluded these newly legalized aliens from most of these programs. But it is something that I think is very much on the minds of people like Chuck Schumer, that they will come back later and try to fix, or, in their opinion, fix the problem.
Yeah, well, it's called buying votes with other people's money. So, folks, just to put this in perspective, if the average family on assistance gets $20,000 to $30,000 a year, that is the number. In other words, they get welfare, they get their food stamps, they get certain subsidies. I mean, the list is endless. You can go online and dial up social programs, and it'll fill 30 pages of Google. Think about 30 million people sometime in the next couple years when the Democrats drag poor families who need health care or who have starving kids or whatever, who were admitted under this bill, in front of the TV cameras and say, we have to help these people. So 30 million times, we'll take the low number, $20,000 a year. What do you think that's going to do to our deficit? What do you think that's going to do to our annual budget, which, of course, we don't have anyway? Yeah, I mean, just put the numbers together, and you know who's going to pay for it? Your kids. Your kids are going to pay for it. What else? I mean, there is so much crap floating around this bill, and it's great that you're shedding light on it, Ira. Tell us some of the other, shall we say, talking points of the bill proponents, which are absolutely false. You've already uncovered about 4 of them here.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you listen especially to the Republicans, Marco Rubio, every other word out of his mouth is, we have de facto amnesty right now. No, we don't have de facto amnesty right now. What we have is an administration that refuses to enforce the laws that Congress passed. What we have is a Congress that won't stand up for its constitutional authority to make laws in this country. They are allowing the president to essentially nullify laws made by Congress. And, what we need instead of de facto amnesty or non-enforcement is real, meaningful enforcement. One of the things that people need to understand about illegal immigrants is that they are really rational people. Our Congress may not be made up of rational people, but the illegal immigrants really are very rational. They have come here because they believe that our laws are not going to be enforced. They remain here because they can get access to jobs and other benefits in this country. We don't need to deport 12 million people. What we need to do is enforce our laws in a sensible way that convinces illegal immigrants it doesn't pay to come and it doesn't pay to stick around. And it actually has worked in the past. The last time we went through this debate back in 2007, when President Bush was pushing amnesty, after it was defeated because nobody believed that he'd carry out the law even after amnesty, he very cynically said, okay, you want to see me do enforcement? I'll do enforcement. And over the last 18 months or so of his administration, he actually did enforcement. And even before the recession, we saw the number of illegal immigrants living in the country decline. Then the recession hit and the jobs dried up. And guess what? Still more illegal immigrants decided, you know what, there's no point in staying here. And over a 2 or 3 year period, we actually saw the number of people living in the country illegally decline because they are rational people. If there are no jobs, they're not coming. It doesn't matter, if the jobs aren't there because the government's enforcing the law or because the economy has tanked. The bottom line is no jobs, you're not going to have a whole lot of people coming here illegally. And so if we were to do this on a consistent basis, what we would likely see is a lot of people decide it doesn't pay to come and remain in the United States illegally. The problem over time wouldn't solve itself, but it would become significantly less detrimental to the welfare of the United States. That's what we ought to be doing. But instead, you have Marco Rubio and some of these other Republicans trying to convince the American people that what we have now is de facto amnesty. What we have now is just failure of government to protect the interests of the American.
Yeah, well, it's not just failure. I mean, it's proactive failure. Tell the audience just briefly, Obama did an executive order about 12 months ago and basically told immigration that they could not enforce the immigration laws against, it was 1.2 or 2.2 million illegal aliens of a certain type?
Right. It wasn't even an executive order. It was just a policy statement. And basically he nullified a lot of immigration laws. He said qualified for the DREAM Act. That's a bill that's been around Congress since 2000. It has been rejected on several occasions by Congress, most recently in December of 2010. And the president said, well, since Congress didn't pass it, I'm just going to go ahead and implement it anyway. And his policy is that he is going to give deferred action. Basically, that means that the Immigration Service isn't going to enforce the laws against anybody who might have qualified for a law Congress did. And in doing so, he has essentially negated a whole bunch of laws that Congress actually did pass.
Which Congress doesn't have the balls to stand up and enforce.
Exactly. Congress does not enforce its own laws. Not only that, it won't even stand its ground against the usurpation of their constitutional authority by the executive branch. It is more than just upsetting the whole balance on immigration. It really is an attack on the checks and balances that our founding fathers built into our Constitution. Congress, the legislative branch, makes our laws. The executive branch, the president, is charged with carrying them out, whether he likes those laws or not. He is free, like any other person, to try to facilitate changes in our laws, but he is obligated to carry out the laws that Congress passes, and Congress is obligated to hold him accountable.
Well, not only that, I believe he takes an oath to that effect. Of course, promises by Mr. Obama don't mean much, no matter whether they're on a Bible in front of 2 million people or otherwise. Tell us what, in terms of immigration reform, and we're going to talk about this, and then I'm going to ask you to tell folks what they can do right now to make sure this bill, this botulism of a bill, does not pass and is replaced by something that means something. Give us 4 things that you would like to see in true, real, workable immigration reform.
Well, the first thing is we need to have a system in place that prevents people who are here illegally from getting jobs. Jobs are the number one magnet that draw people to the country illegally. And it's not that we can't prevent people from getting jobs in this country. It is, again, that we have chosen not to because you have a lot of powerful business interests that obviously want to maintain this labor subsidy. What we need is universal E-Verify. It is a system that allows employers to verify, very simply, that the Social Security number or Social Security card that you present actually was issued to you and that it is a valid Social Security number. Much like the way a merchant verifies your credit card. We conduct hundreds of millions of financial transactions every day with verifications with a fraction of 1% of an error rate. There's no reason why we can't have a system in place where an employer can very easily and very quickly check that to make sure that the Social Security number you're presenting belongs to you and is a valid Social Security number. That would eliminate a lot of the magnet of jobs. And once you've done that, you have discouraged a lot of people from coming across the border illegally. Once you've discouraged people, the fewer people that come across, the greater effectiveness you can deploy the resources that you have. If you didn't have millions of people streaming across, then the Border Patrol could actually do an effective job of finding and removing people who come across the border illegally. Next, we also need interior enforcement. Right now, we have a system in place that says if you can get by that first line of defense, you're pretty much home free. It shouldn't be that way. We need better cooperation between federal and local authorities. Local police, when they have reasonable suspicion that somebody is violating federal immigration law, they ought to act the same way that they would in any other circumstance when they find that another jurisdiction might be interested in an individual. And finally, what we need to do is establish a legal immigration policy that really makes sense for the 21st century. We need to determine how many people we choose to absorb into this country and come up with a system that says we are going to select people based on individual merit, not simply based on, some institutionalized policy of nepotism.
Yes, or anchor babies.
Yes, there's another thing. The anchor baby, this is a fundamental misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was ratified after the Civil War. The intent was to grant citizenship to the emancipated slaves. And if you go back and you read the debates that took place on the floor of Congress in the 1860s, it was very clear that they did not mean that anybody who comes to the United States and has a baby on our soil has a brand new U.S. citizen. That was never the intent. what we need to do is interpret the 14th Amendment the way it was intended by the framers of that amendment, and eliminate this problem where you have people coming from all over the world simply to give birth here in the United States.
Yes, and then that child, by the way, earns them a child tax credit of $1,000 a child. And that child is supported on social programs and social welfare throughout the rest of its life. So, I mean, you really have a kind of a triple cost going there. What percentage, Ira, of the illegal immigration to the United States, because everybody, immediately thinks Mexico, and obviously that's a big chunk of it, but I think people would be shocked to know what percentage of illegal immigration to the United States or illegal aliens that are here now are not Mexican?
Well, Mexico is obviously the lion's share because we share a 2,000-mile border with a country where wages and working conditions are significantly lower than what they are here. I would say probably about 60% of the illegal immigrants in the United States are from Mexico, which means that 40% are from elsewhere. You've got obviously people from the country south of Mexico and Central America, but you have from virtually every part of the world illegal aliens, including from the Middle East, from parts of the world where there is great hostility to the United States, and we don't know who these people are. And as we have learned from very bitter experience, it doesn't take a whole lot of people to create a whole lot of tragedy here in this country, and it's something that our national leaders, including many local leaders, choose to ignore.
Right, and to put that in perspective for you folks out there in listening land, so if you have 11 million, and I think that number is low, illegal aliens in the United States, 40% is close to 5 million folks from places other than Mexico, many of those places, shall we say, not very friendly to Americans or America. Ira, what can people do to make sure that this horrible bill, 1,200 pages, I mean outrageous, with all the pork and all the nonsense that's in it to buy votes, just like Obamacare, what can they do right now when literally, when this show is over, what do they need to do to shut this thing down?
Well, the first thing they need to do is talk to their United States senators. The bill number, by the way, is S-744. It is known as the Gang of Eight bill, but that is really the vehicle by which they are going to try to move this amnesty and massive infusion of foreign workers. The debate on that is coming to a head. The matter may be resolved this week, and then it moves to the House, and that's where I think the real chance to stop it is going to be. The House is obviously, number one, in Republican hands. The members tend to be closer to their constituents than the senators are. The basic premise that we ought to be granting amnesty to people who are in the country illegally, who are here illegally, is probably something we shouldn't entertain in the first place. But to do that before we have fulfilled promises to the American people that our borders are going to be secure, that there's going to be some policing of the workplace, that is just unconscionable. We have had 25 years of broken promises to the American people. When people call their House member, make sure they understand that you expect the promises that have been made to the American people are kept before they even think about offering amnesty to people who are here illegally.
I mean, one of the biggest lies about this bill is that this is going to be the toughest enforcement you've ever seen, when in fact this waters down actual bills that have passed Congress in the past and makes them less effective.
Exactly. It is watering down existing law, and by the way, those existing laws are yet more examples of the broken promises. We have been promised things that have never been delivered on, and now they're kind of rolling it back and promising us again. It kind of reminds you of, the Lucy, Charlie Brown, and the football. How many times can Lucy pull that football away before Charlie Brown gets the message here? Well, to our members of Congress, we need to let them know that we're a little bit smarter than Charlie Brown. That we understand that football isn't going to be there, and that we want certain things without any promises. We want them to demonstrate to us empirically that they are going to do what they say they're going to do before they consider anything else.
Good. Let's wrap up. Why don't you tell folks about some of the studies and resources that are on your site, because I think they'll find it interesting and get a lot more information than they can in just a half an hour, actually 35 minutes between you and I, and how they can become a member and support the great work your organization is doing.
Well, it's all there on our website, which is fairus.org, fairus.org. It gives you information about membership, about how to get the latest alerts about what's going on. And if you go to the website, you have these pull-down menus. Just any aspect of immigration policy or how it affects any policy that you might be interested in is right there at your fingertips. Because immigration policy isn't just about immigration. It affects everything. It affects your taxes. It affects your health care in this country. It affects the schools that your children are attending. And all these things are going to be affected a whole lot more if this awful piece of legislation were ever to become law.
All right. Well, Ira, listen, I know you're extremely busy with the fight going on in Washington. Thanks for taking time out to inform this audience. They needed that information. We'll look forward to having you back on in a few months as this thing is fought bitterly in the House in one way, shape, or form.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
You bet, Ira. This is Reid Lance Rosenthal on the right side, folks. We're going to take a slight break here for a little commercial. I'm going to come back on, give you some fun news, and then we're going to wrap up this show, as I promised up at the beginning, with Reid's take on the current set of scandals. A lot of you have emailed me and said, you've been great about telling us the facts. We've seen lots of stuff on TV, but what do you think? So I'm going to deviate from my usual style, which is try and present you facts, or facts as other people see them, shall we say, and I'm going to tell you what my opinion is on these scandals. And I think it's going to shock you, because I think there's some big surprises coming, all of which the administration is trying to do the sideways dance to avoid. I think they're unavoidable, and I think what we're going to learn is actually going to set your hair on fire. We'll see. Of course, time tells all tales. We'll be right back.
350,000 readers made the Threads West, an American Saga series, a #1 bestseller in 2011, winning 8 national awards, including Best Western, Best Romance, and Best Historical Fiction. Threads West, an American Saga. This is our story. Author Reid Lance Rosenthal is a fourth-generation land and cattleman whose cowboy heart and poet's pen capture the spirit of the American landscape. His long-standing devotion to wild and remote places and to the people both past and present who leave their legend and footprint upon America and the American West. That's www.threadswestseries.com.
Welcome back. By the way, I'm going to be signing books at Westminster Barnes & Noble starting about 12:30 on Sunday. That's tomorrow, till about 4:30 or 5. And I would love to meet some of you. So please come on down, whether you buy a book or not. I love it when I meet my listeners. Grab a coffee. We can yak a little bit in between me signing the novels. So many of you have sent me emails. I try and deal with the facts. Facts you haven't heard. Kind of my job to bring them to you in advance of other media. Sometimes facts other media simply isn't going to carry. Because the more knowledge you have, the better the decisions you can make, and the better the opinions you can form. So many of you have asked me what my opinions are. Look, let's start with Benghazi. Now, we all know kind of the facts out there. We know about the lie on the video. We know about Obama continuing the lie long after testimony has now revealed he knew better, including a speech to the UN. We know Hillary has been nowhere to be found. She had a concussion. She had a cold. She throws up her hands on the one hearing she attended. Well, what difference does it make? I mean, is that who you want answering the phone at 3 in the morning? And we know about Susan Rice, and we know about her promotion. Yeah, she goes out and lies to the American public and gets promoted. And we know that there have been that the State Department and Department of Defense, the administration has hidden the Benghazi survivors. There's been not one single interview of them at all. Don't you find that a little odd after 10 months? So, what is the administration hiding? I mean, this is after the election. There was obviously a political motive toward how they handled this 3 or 4 weeks before the November election. But what are they really hiding? Let me tell you what I think they're really hiding. First of all, there's a pretty wide school of thought out there that if you go back in the records, Morsi, and remember, Obama is a Muslim Brotherhood sympathizer. He invited them in the door in 2009. We funded them with $1.5 billion. We sent them tanks. We sent them planes. Yada, yada, yada. Go back into the archives, listen to the shows with Claire and Ryan just weeks ago as to what's really going on there. He has Muslim Brotherhood folks working in the administration, advising security forces, FBI, CIA. These are facts, straight facts. Well, Morsi, when he first came to power, wanted the return of the blind sheik. Many people think that this was a failed kidnapping attempt. This is supported, by the way, by posts on Al-Qaeda websites, which say that, when this thing went bad, that Stevens, the ambassador, was actually killed by lethal injection. That was their plan B. And the deal was Stevens was to be kidnapped, and then he was to be exchanged for the blind sheik. And this was kind of a behind-the-scenes thing that Obama had arranged with Morsi. And it's not beyond the pale, given the continual flow of lies, subterfuges, obfuscations, omissions, and stonewalling that's coming out on all the rest of these scandals, including Benghazi. That's one alternative. The second alternative is that some people think that Obama is actually actively supplying Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda branches with weapons. I'm not going to go into why he might be doing that, but that is a school of thought on many planes. You can Google it up, and there's some pretty credible sources, including security analysts, defense analysts, former military men, etc. Maybe he just didn't want that to get out. But here's what I think. I think that in the end, Benghazi will be the torpedo that sinks Obama's political ship. The IRS is horrible. The intrusion of the Justice Department on AP, CBS, Fox, and the perjury by Holder in front of Congress concerning the Rosenthal affidavit is a travesty. The NSA thing is outrageous. The Civilius thing, where she's out soliciting private money because they're $4 billion over budget just on gearing up Obamacare. Never mind the $1.7 trillion bust they already have in the budget on Obamacare. That's outrageous. I can go all the way down the list. But I think that Mr. Obama himself gave the stand-down order for Benghazi. He left 4 Americans swinging in a lethal wind out there against everything this country stands for, the traditions of the military and the traditions of the diplomatic corps. Think about this. This is a fact. Nobody can account for his time that night. Basically, he had one phone call with his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dempsey, and Panetta, his then defense secretary, and he disappeared. Went off to a campaign deal the next day in Las Vegas. Don't you think that's a little odd? If you think in your personal experience, when do you walk away from something? That's not hard for you to figure out, right? Anybody who's listening to this show can remember when you've walked away from a problem. You know why? Because you've made a decision. You've decided to do X, Y, or Z or not. And therefore, problem over. On to the next thing. I think Barack Obama personally issued the stand-down order, stopped any help from going in, and went off to do whatever he did that night, go to bed, and go to his campaign rally the next day. And I think that stand-down order, when it comes out, is going to be the torpedo that sinks his political ship. So that's my forecast for Benghazi. Of course, that's assuming they continue the hearings. The IRS. Okay, here's my opinion on the IRS, folks. Number one, the continuing litany of facts. By the way, I have a number of articles posted with this show on the IRS, on Benghazi. This is stuff you have not read before. It's backed up. Read the articles. So the IRS thing, they're trying to mask it. Oh, there's some progressive groups, there's some liberal groups that they looked at. Well, listen, they're not telling you the whole story. Yeah, they looked at some liberal groups, and they were all granted within months their 503 status, their tax-exempt status. It's only the Tea Party, the conservative, the religious groups that had the BOLO words, as they call it, the catchwords that they were instructed to follow, that still 24, 26, 27 months later don't have status. I think it was motivated by politics. It was motivated by trying to disrupt Tea Party organizing efforts prior to the election. And I think that what we will find, because it's unraveling right now, I mean, we have more and more scandals kind of coming out of the IRS, buying porn, buying booze. The articles on the ontherightsideradio.com site along with the show. We now have the second IRS official pleading the fifth. Listen, that's your right, but you don't plead the fifth unless you're worried about something. Okay, the original story, just kind of like the video in Benghazi, that it was 2 rogue agents in Cincinnati, BS. That's been totally disproved. It's now out of 5, 6, 7 offices around the country, and it all flows back to IRS in Washington, D.C. The director of IRS committed perjury a year ago. He ought to be thrown in jail along with Holder. And we have Lois Lerner and this Rosenthal guy, I think I have his name right, who pleaded the fifth just the other day, and I think you're going to see more of that, and they're Washington people. And then you have the 300 visits by the guy who lied to Congress about this going on to the White House, which is roughly 10 times more visit than any cabinet secretary. And the excuse is they won't release the logs. But the excuse is, without releasing the logs, he was talking about Obamacare. Here's what's going to come out on that. We already know that the White House counsel knew about it back in April sometime. We know that the White House chief of staff knew about it before then. We know the IRS knew about it at the latest in May, June of 2012. And some evidence points to them knowing it in May 2011, particularly by Lois Lerner, who pled the fifth. And I think what we're going to find is this was orchestrated, dreamed up, and administered by the White House. Maybe Obama's fingerprints aren't on it directly, but I think you will trace it back to Valerie Jarrett, his right-hand communist, she's not even a progressive, communist henchman, the most powerful person in the White House other than the president. Michelle Obama is second to Valerie Jarrett in terms of who he listens to. And I think that she orchestrated it. I'm going to remind you of something that she said right after the election. This is a quote. You can Google it up. Now it's payback time. That's a quote from Valerie Jarrett. Just thinking about this stuff makes my blood boil. I don't know about you. When you can't trust your government, when they lie to you about everything, when they undermine your Constitution and your freedoms, I don't know about you, but that really pisses me off. Well, let's take a little break. I have some great stuff on the books coming out. The third book's coming out end of July, 1st of August, right in there. Go to threadswestseries.com. Sign up. It'll take you 5 seconds, completely private. There's hardly any emails that go out of that site. Trust me, your inbox will not be filled up, but you'll be ahead of the rest of the public on releases, awards, which the books have gotten 5 more national awards in the last 6 months. And I'm very excited about book 3. With all bias aside, I think it's going to rock. Remember, it's the author talking now. What's really cool is on July 4th, write this down, we're going to unveil the quote-unquote new book one. We're calling it the July 2013 reprint. I mean, it won 8 national awards, was a multiple #1 bestseller for months and months and months. It's almost unheard of. But the July 2000 reprint, well, it has 120 more pages than the original book one, Threads West. It has 9 new chapters. If you've read book one, you will love the reprint. If you haven't started the series, you will love the reprint. I really think so. Once again, all bias aside. And for those of you who have a previous book one, that is probably a collector's item. In fact, it is a collector's item because as of about July 15th to 18th, you will no longer be able to get those. From then on is July 2013 reprint, from now until the 32nd book in the series, because the series has been expanded by the publishers to 32 books. You know, the entire story of us, of brave men, independent women, you know these people, folks. You know them. They are your neighbors. They are your co-workers. They're your family. They are you and they are us. This is our story. I really believe that we are a tapestry. You know, the threads of all the various cultures, the threads of all the various beliefs and faiths, ambitions, some light, some dark, that have created this country, that form the cloth of the nation, makes us unique. Most countries are mosaics. We are a tapestry. And this is the story of our tapestry, beginning in 1854, and the last book, the 32nd book, with the 3.5 millionth word, 3.5 million words in this series when it's all done, will be set in the real time of the contemporary West. 170 years of fictional history through the eyes of these various characters from their cultural, faith, and other perspectives. Anyway, if you get a chance, go to Amazon. Go to barnesandnoble.com. Go to your local Hastings, Barnes & Noble, or bookstore and see if you can't grab one of the few book ones still out there that have not been gobbled up as collector's items. We're calling it the Collector's Book One. And if you go to the website, or keep your ears tuned, I'll be talking about it on the radio, you'll be able to pick up the July 2013 reprint in print about the third week in July. I can't tell you the exact date yet. It's at the printers right now. And, of course, Book 3 following on its heels, Uncompahgre, where water turns rock red. And remember, Book 2, Maps of Fate, is the story of these characters after they come from Europe in Book 1, coming out to Cherry Creek, pre-Denver, 1855. And Uncompahgre is when some of them go across the divide, go into ranching. Some are sucked into the Ouray gold rush around Telluride and Silverton, and others, to be kind, stray far from the law. So, keep your ears to the track. ThreadsWestSeries.com. Check it out. Oh, I almost forgot. I mean, this is pretty key. To unveil the July 2013 reprint, on July 4th, for that day only, if you go to ThreadsWestSeries.com, we will have the ebooks, both for the July 2, we'll call it the new Book 1, and Book 2, Maps of Fate. Both #1 bestsellers, many different awards, for $1.99. You can download them right on the site into your computer. You can put them on your Kindle. You can put them on your Nook. You can put them on your Kobo. You name it. $1.99 per ebook just for that day. I think they go for $5.99, $6.99, $7.99 at Amazon, etc. So July 4th, 24 hours, starting at midnight, ending at midnight. Once again, go to the site. You'll see all the information. Enjoy. Let's get back to, I want to wrap up the show here with my feelings on the NSA and the press scandal. Number one, Eric Holder absolutely committed perjury. Number two, Barack Obama supports and has supported Eric Holder. That's about all you need to know. We have a president who supports lying by the Attorney General to Congress. I think that says boatloads. And I believe that we will find, as we get further into that one, although it'll be one of the last ones kind of where the onion is peeled, you're going to find that that came from the White House too. Collusion between Eric Holder and Barack Obama, who have been very long-time friends and who are close allies in thought and ideology. And on the NSA, let me tell you, folks, that NSA thing is just starting to unravel. We're going to know more and more and more and more about that. And we're going to understand more and more and more just how close we are to a complete surveillance 1984 Orwellian nightmare in this country. And that might all tie in with the executive orders and other things. And it certainly all ties in to the dark motivations behind what's going on with immigration right now. And that's on both sides of the aisle. But it is spurred, and the catalyst is Obama and the progressives that now control the Democratic Party. So that's my thoughts on the scandals. And by the way, I didn't even touch 4 or 5 of them, right? In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the first half of the show. Great interview with Ira from FAIR. Look them up, fairus.org. They're doing a yeoman's job on this immigration bill. Acquaint yourself with this bill. This bill will affect you. It'll affect your pocketbook. It'll affect your life. It'll affect your job. It'll affect your schools. It's huge. Huge. And it may very well affect the future of this country. This is Reid Rosenthal on the right side. We'll talk to you next Saturday.